everybody. Welcome back to Strength and Conditioning, Kinesiology 3073 with Dr. Dorgo. This is my second video assignment. My name is Raman Thomas, and this assignment will be focusing on more plyometric and speed movements. So, our first video assignment had to do with resistance training. This one is more explosive, quick movements. So with that, we'll be getting into the equipment. So the equipment that we use in total throughout this exercise segment was the elliptical, jump rope, bench, like any type of flat bench or any type of box really, dumbbells, and a barbell. And then on top of that, you have a speed ladder and a medicine ball of varying weight. So to get started, we're going to hop right into our general warm-up. So throughout the whole warm-up, I decided to follow what's called the ramp protocol. To start, I hopped on the elliptical for about 5 minutes. So you're probably wondering, what is the ramp protocol? It's a structured warm-up. We had covered it in chapter 14 of our book, but it stands for raise, activate, mobilize, and potentiate. So that is a entire protocol, a whole warm-up routine dedicated to helping athletes prepare physiologically and psychologically for the workout ahead. So the reason I chose the elliptical is because it targets the R part, the raise part of the ramp protocol. This is due to it being a component that it raises your heart rate, obviously, but it raises your temperature, helps all your joints be a little bit more fluid. As you can see, I'm moving my arms and my legs here, so it's simulating me running. It's not quite me running, but it's very similar to such a movement that it's enough that it's giving me a good amount of workout. So with this, you don't want to go too heavy or too fast into the workout. Like, you want to keep it at a moderate pace. You don't want to make this an entire workout in itself, because again, this is just a warm-up. You're not trying to work yourself out completely. We had mentioned in the previous video, you don't want to wear out your anaerobic systems before you even get to actually use them. So you're going to keep at a moderate pace the whole time. Another thing with the ramp protocol and the elliptical, this kind of simulates, like I said, you running. So physiologically and psychologically, as an athlete, it prepares you for the movements of your actual routines. So plyometrics is all about acceleration, speed, jumping, and you're using a lot of your legs. And not only your legs, you're using your arms in tandem with your legs. So it's a mixture of both. It's not just one or the other. You're not isolating things. You're using everything at once. And just to touch over again, similar to the uh, first video assignment that I had went and done, uh, general warm-ups are just meant to, like I said, raise your blood pressure, do all that. They're a little bit different from what we're about to get into after this, but all this is doing is just, again, to re-emphasize my points, you're gonna try and get blood flowing everywhere, get a little sweat in, but not too much. It's all just trying to get your body started into what you're about to do. It sounds like I'm reiterating my points, but these are very important um, for the physiological factors that you're about to go through. So, plyometrics are very intensive compared to resistive training. You have to train it significantly less, especially with untrained clients or people. So, having this warm up be very appropriate and very like in depth, it's very important to the rest of your workout. Uh, it may not seem like it because it's just, oh, it's just an elliptical, but it'll definitely help throughout getting started with what you need to do and getting your body right and getting everything ready mentally and physically. You want to just make sure you're getting everything done before you get all the way into the workout. So, as we're finishing up on the elliptical, um, like I said, this is a general warm up. We are moving now into the specific warm up. These are your movements that are going to help you uh, with more specified movements of your workout. So, um, in addition to that, this is the activation portion, the A part of the ramp protocol. The first exercise we're doing are leg swings, lateral leg swings. Uh, these help open up your hips a lot. So, the momentum of your entire leg just moving up and coming back, that's a very imperative part of you uh, just trying to get your hip flexors and everything in that hip area, all those muscles, all those joints, get it all of that activated. Um, on top of that, your knee and your ankle get a small lateral lateral stress, so they're also getting activated in that way. You want to make sure you're fully pushing your leg through that full range of motion. So the more higher you kick, the better, because you're just opening up your hips more. And you're gonna be using your hips a lot in all plyometric workouts. Your hips are super important. You want to have strong hip flexors, strong hips, strong everything. So moving on into our next workout, I decided to go with alternating walking leg cradles. I didn't really have a specified distance. It was more just kind of you do it till you feel good. But these are great for, again, opening up your hips. But on top of that, you get even more uh, like joint movement. So your knees also being more emphasized in this. You're now incorporating your upper body because you have to grab your entire leg and pull it up towards you, and you want to keep your spine straight. So it's working your extensor muscles in the back on top of your hamstring muscles and things like that. So uh, it's really good. It's super good for your IT band and sciatica and all those muscles that run throughout the lateral part of your thigh. They're super good for that. And usually these can be done two different ways, but because it's a warm up, we're gonna do all of these workouts dynamically. So again, this is the activate portion. Uh, this next exercise in my opinion, is also part of the activation portion. So people call these different things. I like to call them 90/90s. I'm sure there's a more um, proper term. As you can see, I put seated alternating 90-degree hip external internal rotations. That's a super long name, and I'm sure nobody else really wants to call it that. So we just stick to 90/90s. Um, and again, you can do these dynamically or statically, but because it's warm up, we're doing these dynamically. You want to focus on pushing through the hip. Um, in my opinion, I tell people to push your knee and be able to fully feel that extension and uh, that internal and external rotation. These are incredible for opening up your hips. So this is a true part of the activation phase, and I think these are one of the most imperative warm-up exercises that you could do. So uh, one of our last um, warm-ups exercises is going to be alternating walking knee pulls. Uh, these again just are like the leg cradles. However, these are more focused on hamstring and gluteus maximus stretch. Um, Again, you're doing these dynamically, you're not doing it statically, so you're getting the muscle to feel that type 2 fiber. You're getting that a little bit activated. You're obviously not going to get it activated off of just small pulls like this, but it's still just a nice, like, oh, my body's getting ready for this type of movement. And your hamstrings know, and your gluteus maximus knows, and your extensor muscles in your back, all that, they now know that you're going to be moving in such a way. So, uh, the actual final exercise to our workout warm up is going to be jump rope. Now, this you don't want to do for a super long time because it can easily burn you out. You want to make sure you're in open space. Obviously, I was not initially, so that's why I had to look at where I was. Um, but jump rope, I feel, is a really good warm up workout. Uh, it's part of the final part of the ramp protocol, which is the potentiate phase. Yeah, so the potentiate phase, that's a hard word to say, but the potentiate phase is its purpose is to basically simulate movements of your sport. So it's not exactly like, you're doing the exact exercise, but you're simulating um, similar movements to what you're doing. So a lot of plyometrics that I'm going to be doing is a lot of jumping that requires these fast twitch muscles. So you can see I'm on my toes, um, just trying to make sure I'm off the ground as quick as possible. For jump rope, you don't want to be on the ground super long, so it's pretty imperative that you focus on keeping up and not falling. So I did this for about a minute and some, maybe close to 2 minutes, but you don't want to do anything over 2 minutes because at that point it's turning into an exercise rather than a warm up. Uh, it gets really tiring. So I'd put it up right at about like a minute 30, minute 45. So with that, we're gonna get into our actual workout. Our first modality is our lower body plyometrics. So our first exercise that we're gonna be going through are seated jumps. So the difference between just regular jumps and seated jumps, you're starting from a sitting position. This seated position takes away the eccentric of your jump. So normally when you jump, you do that little quarter squat, and you jump as high as you can. This is just working on the uh, concentric phase of your jump. So specifically getting as high as you can after you do that eccentric little sit down. Uh, Without weight is our first variation. You kind of just want to go as high as you can, making sure you're landing on the box correctly. If I did have the proper equipment, I'd like to have a higher box, but I kind of just worked with what I had. So moving into our second variation of seated jumps, we're using weights now. So what the weights do is they add a little bit more resistance to our jump, which makes it a lot harder than what your regular body weight is. So using your normal body weight, you know how high you can jump without weight, obviously, but with the uh, dumbbells, you're able to add a little bit more resistance and put more stress on the concentric. So your jumping phase, you're able to put more pressure through the ground. So that's why this variation is, in my opinion, a variation. You're putting more force contact through your heels, or not your heels, but the balls of your toes, in order to get further up onto the box. So our third and final variation of the seated jumps are far jumps. So now instead of working on just vertical displacement, you're working on vertical and horizontal displacement. Um, this variation is good for athletes who are not just usually not just jumping up. So I would do these for like basketball athletes who need to not only move uh, just up and down, like let's say you're in transition and you're trying to get a fast break block, chase down block. You're not able to just jump up and down. You have to be able to track where the ball is and track where the guy is, track yourself, and move forward as well as moving upwards. So I think this exercise is super important. So moving into our next workout, we are going to be doing depth jumps. The previous sets were 3x5, and these ones are also 3x5. So depth jumps work not only the reactivity of your muscle, but the amount of stress that your muscle and joints can take. So with that, there's a whole like physiological, uh, not phenomena, but happening that goes behind plyometric jumping and things like that. Um, it's about the stretch shortening cycle. So it involves the eccentric, amerization, and concentric phase. Uh, as you could see, I could pause throughout the video. You could also pause and go along with me, but the depth jumps, you are stopping at the bottom for as little amount of time as you can and then jumping as high as you can. So that depth works the um, stress, as I said before, that you can take, and then you're just jumping up immediately after. So our second variation is weighted, but I'll keep talking about the physiological part of these jumps. Um, the eccentric uh, is worked heavily by this exercise because that's where most of your energy is stored. So stretch shortening cycle works in a sense where your eccentric muscle action is stimulated, and what it does is it activates the stretch reflex and the storage of your elastic energy, which is created through the eccentric phase. So that initial landing, um, it increases the force output, um, which thus allows you to jump higher. So that quick amount of time that I'm spent on the floor, that's your eccentric phase, that's your rapid stretch, your stretch reflex, all that's getting stored, and then when you do your concentric phase, it gets put out into higher energy, like higher force output. So for our last variation, we are doing weighted drops. So this is working on the the eccentric phase and then dropping and immediately going into the concentric phase without the weight. So this is inputting more stress on your concentric, which essentially creates more elasticity and increases the stretch reflex when you hit the bottom of that movement. So that's why you can see me at the bottom. I kind of pause to put the weights down and then jump. Um, this one's probably the hardest out of the three. So you want to put your athletes who are experienced on this. You don't want to just start somebody out on this, but it's very good for plyometrics and if you want to get really, really like high vertical jumps and things like that. Moving on to our second modality, uh, it's going to be cleans. So cleans are essential part of any power movement. I believe they're the ultimate power movement as they show all types of explosiveness in an athlete. The first exercise that I chose were hang cleans. The first variation is above the knee hang cleans. So this, I believe, is the easiest version of the hang clean. All you're doing is letting it sink down your hips, letting it go down your thighs, and being able to pop it back up. This works on um, there's phases to a clean, and there's a flip phase where you have to flip your wrist. As you can see, you can see my elbows getting as high as it can, being able to catch it on my collar, and on my shoulders and balancing that. That whole phase of flipping, that's what this part of the hang clean is for. It helps that. So moving on to our second variation of hang cleans. Um, this one I decided to go with the hip hinge. The difference between this and the above the knee is that you're only emphasizing the hip movement. My form here is you just stand up straight, try to have a big chest, as big as you can. Start with a slight bend in your knee, and then push your hips back and push a weight into your hips, and then flip it. So this is focusing on the, again, the flip part, but more of the upper portion. So rather the concentric, the fast movement of your hips. Um, in a clean movement, you have to incorporate your hips very much. So this is a very good exercise for that, and you're able to push a lot of force out of your hip when you quickly do the concentric phase of pushing your hips back and then pulling them forward and then propelling the bar upwards onto your collarbone and shoulder area. Our third variation was the still hang cleans, but this time we're gonna go below the knee. I think this is the hardest variation because now you're incorporating the hip and the above the knee. So you don't just pull from the bottom of your knees because you can injure yourself. You could hit your kneecaps, and that's very dangerous. What you're going to do is you're going to do a small, slow pull right above your knee, and then flip, and you're just incorporating what you learned from the first and second variation of the hang clean exercise. So it's the same thing over again, just starting from a different position and more focused on the movement because the power clean or the clean in general, it starts from the floor, not from your hip. So this is an essential part to having a better power clean as it simulates a movement the best without getting an actual power clean. Um, as you can see, uh, I'm focusing on keeping all my cues straight. So big chest, uh, knees out, making sure that no knee valgus occurs, any knee inversion, because then that shows a hip imbalance, which is why I worked on hips in the beginning in our warm up. So our second workout are just regular cleans. Um, there's a difference between a regular clean and a power clean. Uh, a full clean is you going straight to the bottom. Uh, Power cleans are you catching it at the top of the movement rather than at the bottom. So for power cleans, these are kind of advanced movements, so you wouldn't want to start a beginner on this. However, you can get intermediate athletes, or you can still get relatively new athletes, but just on a much lower weight, focusing on form because form is super important. As you can see, I can drive my knees out into my elbows and have a common grip, so it's not about trying to muscle it up or anything. It's all about the form. So, in addition to that, the clean very much simulates the same movements as a jump. Um, it's going to go into our next exercise here, but do that first exercise, you could see you have the whole concentric phase where you're in that quarter squat position, and then the eccentric phase of coming up really fast. So it's a full power exercise, but for our second variation of the power clean, we're doing bench assisted power cleans. So these are kind of similar to hand cleans, but they're not in the sense that it's still a power clean because you're still catching it at that high position. Um, this is just for more people who have trouble picking it off the ground or from the ground. It's still clean, but your bench is helping your eccentric pull. Um, just like with what I previously mentioned, it simulates the movements of a jump. So this is at the very top of your movement, so the very top of your jump, and it's just that pop, that final explosion that you need. Those like little, like 1.5 inches, and you just flip hard as you can. But it's assisted, so it makes it easier than a regular power clean, rather than doing it straight from the floor. So the final variation of the power clean that I decided to go with is dumbbell power cleans. So these biomechanically might be better for clients or athletes who have wrist problems or poor wrist mobility. I prefer dumbbells over kettlebells because kettlebells, I feel like they can, I feel like they're more injury prone. So you could probably, with this type of movement, it's very dangerous to do. Whereas dumbbells, it's just that along one plane, the sagittal plane, and you just move it up in that sense, and you can move it down with your brachioradialis and your biceps brachii, things like that, and you can control the movement a lot better. Again, you can see me trying to focus on pushing my knees out. That's one cue that you really need to focus on your athlete. Always push your knees out, knees out, knees out, because knee valgus is a very dangerous thing and can lead to serious injuries. But we went 3 by 8 for each of these cleans repetitions. So with that, we're moving on to the third modality, which is foot quickness drills. So the first exercise is lateral movement, and it's scissors. So um, I'd say we do 3 rounds of these, back and forth. Lateral movement focuses on, as what it said, lateral movement. Um, you want to emphasize the pushing of you moving left to right rather than any other direction, like forward. I'd slow the video down to show the form of scissors. So with each step, you're gonna move laterally once. Um, as you can see, it's left, move to my lateral left a little bit once, and then right, and then you just keep following back and forth between each step. The second variation is in and out. Um, you're gonna go. So a lot of people have their own methods of running the ladder. I preferably like to count. So it's a 1, 2, 3, 4 movement. You step up with your lead foot, and then you follow with your other foot, and you come back out, and then you move your other foot back out. So it's not simultaneous like scissors. And I slowed it down here, so you see forward, forward, backwards, backwards. It's a 1, 2, 1, 2, like a 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4 type movement. And I believe counting really helps because coordination is really hard on these. It's very important. Your stabilizers need to be very good for these. So the third variation is a variation of the in and out. I was taught this by a defensive back coach. I believe it's very advanced because instead of just moving like in and out, you're now incorporating that lateral step. So how we kind of did in scissors moving laterally, we're including a additional step. So a 1, 2, 3, 4 back, 1, 2, 3, 4 back, 1, 2, 3, 4 back, and you just keep moving laterally, and then you push out on that last one. The lateral movement is very imperative at any sport, so getting that correct is imperative to trying to get feet, quick feet, and things of that nature. Our second exercise is with forward movement, and for the first variation of this exercise, we're gonna do 1 foot in, 1 foot steps, or a single leg steps, whichever you prefer. You're moving forward instead of laterally this time, so that's the difference between the exercises. I'm gonna slow it down here, but it's just a single step. So each step you take, you're gonna do one in the box, one out of the box, one in the box, one out of the box, and while you're doing this, you're also propelling yourself forward. So you're trying your best to move forward at the same time as touch each box as best you can. This is a second round of the single leg steps, but this is just reiterating on the point of making sure you step in each box and making sure you stay light on the balls of your feet rather than trying to work on your heels. Now, with ladder movements, it's not only your feet that are moving, it's very imperative that your arms move with it. So, especially here in our second variation, the single leg step with outer leg follow. This one is pretty hard for people who don't have that coordination. I'm gonna slow it down in a bit, but this is definitely a good foot quickness drill. You're gonna do the single leg step again, but after you do the single leg step, you're gonna throw your back leg or throw your lateral leg, your outer leg, into the same ladder, and then just do the same step all over again. This one's a little bit more advanced, so I slowed it down a bit. This count for me is 1, 2, 3, 4, and it's what helps me. Different things will help different people, so finding your own method is great, but what helps me is the numbers. Again, you're pushing yourself forward, making sure you're stepping in each ladder and breaking out at the very top of your drill. So the last forward movement that we're going to do, the third variation, is the Icky Shuffle. This one is, I'd say, easier than the second variation, but people all have their own opinions. It's all just about coordination and stability and the ability to propel yourself forward while moving quickly with your feet. So again, this is a 1, 2, 3, 4 movement. Actually, it's a 1, 2, 3 movement. So you're gonna do 2 feet in, one out, and you're just gonna lead in, step out, lead in, step out, and you're just gonna press out after that. So this works. Yes, it works on lateral quickness, but you're still moving forward. So it's just like the last two drills, but again, emphasizing the point on moving forward as fast as you can while being able to have the feet speed to keep up with that forward movement. Now moving on to our fourth modality, we will be doing agility ladder speed drills. So this is focusing on your speed rather than your footwork. Speed can It relates to your you cycling of your feet. Quick feet are essential, and the thing that separates this from the last modality is the you're not focusing on uh, the amount of time like spent on the ground. You're definitely more focused on moving forward in the movement. So again, this is the first variation, which is a single foot in each ladder. So it's essentially like you're running, but you're making sure you're putting one foot in each ladder. So you're incrementing your steps and having a little break in between, but still being able to move as fast as you can through it. So for our second forward run, we're going to vary it with 2 feet in each ladder. So again, trying to move as fast as possible as you can, but in the forward direction. So rather than focusing on your feet uh, being quick, you're focusing on you propelling yourself forward and getting enough steps in to do like such a movement. Here I slowed it down a bit. It's just a 1-2 count. These were very hard for me. I had very heavy feet and I used to step very heavy, and a lot of clients and athletes still do. So I still think it's very important to just work on it when you can. Work slow to fast rather than fast to slow, because this movement is a little bit more advanced. And some people can have trouble and they'll trip up on the ladder. So it's very, very imperative to work your way up into these things rather than just go straight into it. Our third and final modality for forward one runs are 2 forward and 1 back. So I would have rather done runs than jumps. These help uh, with any like bilateral deficit. So some people have a stronger um, like left step than right step. For me, my left leg steps harder than my right leg because I've had surgery on my right knee. So this is for me better because instead of trying to work on one leg individually and not being able to output the force, I'm able to do both rather than just one or the other. As you can see in the slow-mo right there, my right leg kind of lagged back a bit. So I rely heavily on my left leg. But into the second exercise, we're going to do lateral runs. Our first variation is step overs. So this is, again, trying to move laterally as fast as you can. You're going to pull your knee over as much as you can and just push out at the top of the movement. I'm going to slow it down here so you can kind of understand the movement more. But it's one and kind of a cross, and then you're going to step, cross, and you're just trying to move with a little bit of rotation in your body, but move as fast as you can laterally. So the second variation is a step under. So you're stepping not necessarily backwards, but you're including that back foot in order to prepare yourself more forward. I slowed it down here. This is all in preparation for the third variation. So this works on your being able to rotate and break out laterally off the back foot rather than the front foot. Where that all comes into play is a karaoke on the ladder. So a karaoke is a forward and backwards movement. You're incorporating both of the previous variations. You get that front step, and then you do the under, and then you do the over immediately after. And you make sure your foot is in each ladder and you break out laterally. So this one is super advanced, and it's good to work up to it. Work slow to fast instead of fast to slow, but it's incredible for lateral speed if you can get it off. Our fifth modality is trunk plyometrics. So these are a little bit harder to find exercises for, as you have to uh, induce the stretch shortening cycle within the trunk of your body. So doing these explosively are the only way that you can do these types of movements. So for the first exercise, we did standard sit-ups. had my partner here help me out. We pass it back and forth, but on the eccentric phase, kind of go down fast and you come up concentrically even faster. So your trunk can feel that stretch shortening cycle happen. The elasticity that comes from you being on the floor for such a small amount of time, it really helps with that uh, stretch shortening cycle and the elasticity and all that stretch reflex. So for our second variation of sit-ups, we decided to do straight leg, which takes away a stability component. So rather than your feet being on the ground uh, and implanting your force to go through your feet, you're rather relying more on your trunk and still a little bit on the accessory parts of your body. However, this allows your trunk to be more isolated a little bit. You can't completely isolate your trunk, obviously, but it's still just a different way to target the trunk in a plyometric manner. And for our third and final variation of the setup, we decided to do a cross-legged setup, which this completely takes away the stability component of the legs, and it's all up to your trunk now to do the entire movement. So this is the hardest variation of the setup, and you have no stabilizer muscles, so your legs can't help you. You really have to rely on your balance rather than your legs keeping you on the floor, and you're still trying to move plyometrically, trying to induce a stretch reflex, all those things, coming up as fast as you can while doing the movement. For this one, we went 3 by 10, uh, just trying to go as fast as we can to induce as much as we can. So for our next exercise for the trunk, I'm here describing to him the difference between uh, standing the same side and standing opposing sides, because if you were to stand on the same side with this exercise, you'd end up throwing the ball like at the wall or something. Like you wouldn't be able to catch it and throw it. Like it doesn't make sense. So you have to stand opposite sides, and that's why I was explaining to him for a second. But for our second exercise, we're doing lateral med ball toss. The first variation is just standing, so this works with the rotation of your body and of the trunk. Um, this variation, you're standing, so you do have a little bit more help with your legs, but still using your trunk to rotate, and that is what works on the uh, plyometric of the trunk, trying to swing it back as fast as you can. So for our second variation, we're doing kneeling med ball toss. So as you can see, we're keeping our um, medial leg towards each other because you throw off of your uh, the opposing leg to your arm that you're throwing. So as you can see, I'm throwing with my left. When I have my right leg up, he has his right leg up with his left arm throwing. And again, this takes away a stabilizing component because now you're on one knee rather than both feet, and you can't implant both feet into the ground. You only have one and your knee. So with that, we're moving on to our final variation, which we took away the stabilizers completely, and now you're only on your knees. So this isolates your trunk by itself, and you can't rely on your knees to plant into the ground and throw. So you're relying on the trunk's rotation to catch, rotate, and send it back with as much force as possible. So on the concentric, you're coming back with it, and then that rotation really emphasizes that stretch reflex cycle. So these are incredible for trunk plyometrics. And as we're closing down on that one, we're moving into our final modality, which is the upper body plyometrics. For this one, I had moved the medicine ball up a little in weight. The previous one we were using about a 6 pound medicine ball. Now there's different types of medicine balls, but I'll get into that in a second. The first exercise is medicine ball slams, just regular standing medicine ball slams. These work your um, shoulder, your rear deltoids, your trapezius, your mid back, so all those big muscles in your back, and a good bit of your rotator cuff, things like that. All those muscles are worked. Those are the primary movers in this movement, and you want to make sure that you're doing as hard as you can into the ground. The second variation is on knees rather than standing. So again, taking away the stabilizing component, and you're throwing it into the ground and you're catching it as fast as you can, throwing it again. As I had mentioned previously, there are two different types of medicine balls. I would have preferred to use there's a plyometric type of medicine ball rather than this one, and it's more squishy. I guess you could say in a sense, it's a little bigger and it's better to be thrown. This one, it's more for other exercises, but for our final variation, we are doing single arm medicine ball slams. As you can see, I got into a split stance, and this works on unilateral um, muscle work rather than bilateral. So you don't want to just work on the whole thing by itself. You're able to do the movement uh, in both arms individually rather than just one. So the split stance is important as it allows you to grant more rotation in your rotator cuff to slam the ball and gain more velocity with your throwdown. Again, activating the stretch, shortening cycle reflex, and all those things that come with the movement of plyometrics. So our last and final exercise of our upper body plyometrics and workout is supine medicine ball chest pass. Supine meaning I'm on my back facing up, and it's just chest pass. So it's working the plyometrics of your chest as well as your triceps, so your agonist and antagonist muscles. You're gonna have your partner stand over you from a height and drop the ball, and you're gonna catch it and explode it back up as high as you can because you want to get the ball up there as high as you can. Now, the second variation, your partner is now going to be standing a lot shorter than you, and you're still going to be replicating the same movement, explosive movement. However, you're not going to throw it nearly as high. So this is more working on your reflex rather than the explosiveness of the movement. So the reflex of just seeing, oh, the ball's there, how to get it up as fast as I can. So that was the second variation, and it allows you to neurologically get your fast twitch muscles engaged and things like that. The final variation is individual. So the previous two we did 3 by 10. For this one I did 3 by 15. And you're going to throw this one as high as you can, but this is all reactivity. So with the previous ones, we had our partner pausing at the top. For this one, you're going to catch and throw as fast as you can. So it's all about reactivity and explosiveness. So activating those agonist and antagonist muscles by increasing the stimulus and increasing the concentric, which thus increases your concentric by the elastic increase and things like that. So now we're moving on into our cooldown. Starting off with, I'd call them 90-degree anterior leg leans. The alternative name is called pigeon stretch. It's either or, but I was taught a way that stretches the sciatica and the IT band. I had a lot of knee pain in high school, so this stretch more focused on the lean into the um, quad, which forced while you're in that position, it forces your IT band to stretch a little bit more. I held these for a minute aside, and I did 2 rounds of them. The form for this one is just you have your knee bent at a 90 degree, and your back knee back like a lunge, and then you come down through your knee, and you push into your leg, making sure you feel all the stretch throughout your medial thigh. So as you can see, I'm setting that 90-degree angle down, and I'm leaning into the leg, trying to keep my back leg straight. So there's a different form for this where your hip is more internally rotated and your posterior leg is straight, which stretches your hip flexor, but you'd already stretched hip flexors, and on top of that, another stretch that we're going over is gonna cover the same type movement. So the design of the plyometric workout, um, the training program, if you were to do such all of these like in quick succession, it should be more spread out rather than just put all together in one session. Um, on top of that, you do want to work alternatively between the two, so you don't want to do a high intensity upper body and then high intensity lower body, because then you're just going to burn out both systems and you're not going to be able to properly be able to expand the energy you need. And on top of that, the elasticity of your muscles won't be as effective because you won't be exerting as much energy. So with this, um, you want to limit these types of trainings to like maybe 2 to 3 times a week. That's even as an advanced plyometric. Most you would do is 4 times a week. Plyometrics aren't something that you would do every single day of the week just to do. Eventually, those systems are not run out, but it's very injury prone. Plyometrics are very high risk, high reward. So making sure that you're able to recover as good as you perform with these is very important. And as we wrap up the pigeon stretch, we are moving into our next stretch, which is again for the hips, because throughout all these eccentric and concentric movements, you've been working a lot of your hips, um, internally and externally. Uh, so for the second one, we're doing the same exercise that we did in the beginning in the warm up phase. The 90-90s, however, we're performing them statically rather than dynamically. So in the beginning, we were focusing on making sure each rotation was quick and effective with the muscle, trying to make sure all the fluids get spread out and you're able to feel that quick tension in your hips. For this one, you're moving rather slow and you want to focus on keeping your spine and chest as erect as possible, staying up straight, and slowly internally and externally rotating your hips. Because now this is working not only the like the sides, it's also the hip flexors and everything in between. Um, it's working more than one plane, so it's all planes of your hip instead of just the vertical aspect or the lateral aspect. And for this exercise, I decided to go um, about. I did end up going 9 rotations on each side. You can count it, but around 9 rotations is where um, I believe you get the most out of this stretch. Um, if you do it too much, you might not tear something, but it's a lot of stress on your tendons and whatnot. So it's really good to go around like 9 or whichever you feel comfortable with. But again, making sure your back's straight and you're going through every plane of motion, slowly coming up and then slowly descending with the other knee and resetting the position each time. Moving into our final exercise, um, we're now working onto the upper body portion. These are the final stretches of the cool down. Not too long of a cool down, but just something so you can get most parts of your body that you worked uh, all stretched out and things like that. So for this, we went with shoulder external rotation. For these, you're gonna hold it for about a minute or so. You're just gonna find a wall that you can plant your hand on. You're gonna keep your arm completely extended and planted into the wall, and you're gonna just turn the complete opposite direction of the wall. You're gonna feel this in your shoulder girdle and your rotator cuff, and in addition to that, you're gonna feel it throughout your anterior deltoid and more throughout just the upper body in general. So all of your agonist muscles and your antagonist muscles that you use throughout the upper body portion of your plyometric workout, those are what you're gonna really feel, and this stretch is gonna be really good for that. The final one is just me rotating to the other side and working the other part of your shoulder. So you're doing the opposite shoulder now, and you're just making sure that you get every part of your body worked out